So you both are okay with being filmed?
Yep.
All right. Let's get this show on.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Exhibit A, humans have an innate right to defense. What distinguishes them from objects should see one, a person is being capable of setting or purpose of thing is something to use in pursuit of purpose. Your capacity is setting or purpose is just your own person. You're independent. You're the one to decide which purpose you will pursue. You're dependent on another person's choice. That person gets to decide what purpose you will pursue. Each person is entitled to be your own master. There are two models of freedom: the non-interference model and the non-domination model. The non-interference model holds that someone's freedom is violated if they're actually interfered with. Whereas the non-domination model holds that someone's freedom is violated if someone's capacity to arbitrarily interfere. For example, a slave with a benevolent master would be free under non-interference because the master lets them set and pursue whatever ends they want. But unfree under freedom is non-domination because the freedom is contingent upon the master's capacity to interfere arbitrarily. Prefer the non-domination model. Exhibit B, the non-interference model can't ground political legitimacy as would reject all use of the state petted. The conception of freedom has been dominated by Castro's non-interference, and under that conception it's hard to see how state coercion can cohere with freedom. All else take away from the freedom of subjects and release some of their choices. Under the conception of freedom is non-interference, there's no way in which subjects will lock and enjoy full freedom of choice. They'll be subject to state interference. Exhibit C, by distinguishing between arbitrary and non-arbitrary interference, non-domination is able to ground political legitimacy and justify state interference. Pettit 2. The Republican conception of freedom does not make this possible. Legitimacy can be institutionally secured and for the fact that states operating under the constraints imposed the basis on which liberties have to be secured as public laws. This public entrenchment of freedom enables each person to be able to look one another in the eye. Interference in their choices need not be dominating. The coercive state certainly interferes with this coercion will not jeopardize their freedom if they exercise effective interference. In theory, legitimacy has to identify the idea of the legitimate state understood in the Republican way. Thus, the standard's consistency with freedom is non-domination. Standard analysis. Exhibit D. It's not a question of maximizing non-domination in certain instances, rather having institutional constraints that prevent domination means the absence key to resolve the infeasibility directly to a competitive. Authorities may seek in the name of the Republican will to breach the very forms of system designers. We think the goal requires would be very serious problem with Republicanism was morally infeasible in this way for an undermining capacity of constitutional and institutional designers to blame for the fact they want to achieve Republican freedom is not raise serious problem with moral infeasibility. Zealous aim to break faith in this time to assume and achieve resources of arbitrary power for the behavior in a way that gives their own intelligent judgment way, or rather certain agents think that they can maximize non-domination by transgressing the obligation of the brief and they are sure to be mistaken. Whatever non-domination they hope to bring about by departing from the brief is unlikely to be greater than the massive domination they derive to perpetrate. M2 impacts A. If I win the contention that takes out coercion turns B, the act establishes a check in the state. B takes out utility. Even if the act is done to prevent domination, it's still arbitrary because there's nothing preventing the state from doing otherwise. Prefer additionally exhibit E1. Civic republicanism provides key tools for fighting oppression. Marty 13. Civic republicanism has a basic idea of use to avoid domination. Harm may come from cultural inequality, sex, and culture behind its many sources. The mere fact of being at the mercy of others, case of domination, be free, enjoy equal social and little status, avoid domination. The Republican government is entirely. Are you timing? I forgot to start.
I'm trying to be cool.
Exhibit F2, the non-interference model is morally repugnant and runs contrary to moral intuitions. It can't condemn problems in political society like racism and poverty. Pettit. A political ideal should assume other significant complaints within it, which is designed to rule out sort of ideals, satisfaction, and slowly a variety of other presumptively significant complaints. Unsatisfied ideal, maximal non-interference fails rather dramatically. Society might realize such an ideal yet be one where inequality, domination, and poverty prevail. Complaints provide a central political ideal, and the measures taken for satisfying it should serve as far as possible to satisfy other complaints as well. Now the plan. Exhibit F. Resolve the United States federal government ought to make the national service provisions by Lindo 3 compulsory. This entails state and local enforcement of service in police forces, fire departments, and military forces. I reserve the right to declare by Lindo 3. Like the militia, civic service would be local. The purpose of this national service would be established 21st century version of the militia. The role of amateur short-term conference will admit opposites to be required to fulfill functions of non-combat roles be in the front of the military and police work. A new militia there would be division of labor between civilians and professionals. Everyone would be required to serve. There are no longer a period of collective communal residence would be necessary. Citizens might receive training on nights and weekends at a bit time each year as well being subject call to emergencies. The program would be administered at the state and local level. Units of service were mandated by a federal draft, helping police, military, emergency personnel pursue criminals, mobilize supplies, make victims be functions of a Republican militia. Now, offense, the advantage of police power. Exhibit G. People become cops due to their authoritarian tendencies. This provides psychological evidence of police domination. Big 15. Criminologists, psychologists, and other social scientists have compiled a large amount of data on the relationship between police behavior and authoritarian tendency to condemn people who violate conventional values. Preoccupation with dominant submission to mention exaggerated assertion of strength and toughness, generalized hostility, disposition, believe that wild and dangerous things go on in the world. Authoritarianism describe officers while American policemen cannot rely on the authority vested in uniform gain compliance. Instead, they feel compelled to assert their personal authority. In this context, police brutality is understandable. Local police culture reinforces authoritarian tendencies. Those individuals who are more authoritarian more likely to see police recruited with segment that mean more prone to authoritarian behavior. Exhibit H. Plan solves the governor taking part in governance, establishes a check linked to this national service to establish militia open all genders and ethnic groups. The purpose would be to ensure that many of the participation of citizens in military and police that are separate castes of soldiers with interest and identity distinct from that of the American majority does not form. The government can restrain the governors by taking part in governance. The point is to prevent individuals from abusing public power for their own benefit. Just as juries act as check on judges. Exhibit I. Citizen involvement in police is key to preventing police brutality and domination. Wrong. 15. Police routinely and openly violate the Fourth Amendment. Is heavily racialized and leads to disproportionate domination. Until institutional powers be distributed in the hands of the people, there would be no racial justice. There would be no peace. In order to stop police brutality, citizens need to pose a legitimate check on the police. The police do not operate through the powers of their consent. Police are unchecked because local democratic system grants them proper authority over the community. While the citizens most service, police violence have no official minority check for reasserting their union power against the police before the violence occurs. Exhibit J. In Singapore, empirically proves compulsory service in the police improves relations with the public. Code 17, national service help change with the public via the police force. Enlistment, bridge the gap between police and people. People began to understand the police better. Public perception change. Exhibit K, best study proves diversity. Or how much time do I have left, actually?
1 minute.
Okay, skip the next one. That links to our exhibit L. That links to the standard Republicanism requires stronger checks on police power and turns con NCSP's police violate free independent 97. Modern police represent threats to Republican values. Police forces are nowadays given enormous powers. They exposed to huge temptation to use those violent use of powers is subject only to very imperfect controls. Powers include to harass and make life miserable, spread rumors, ensure defamation, threaten, and coerce people to temptations to assert yourself and realize it needs a powerful group. Any Republicans going to want to have the police operate under more demanding constraints. Underview. The role of ballot is to evaluate the applicant's competitive policy option in the scope of for 8-point fairness. Anything else means to one same force of 1 error restart, which makes it firmly impossible to short 1 hour fairness to gateway. You don't know if the case is true if I can engage it. It also turns their education claims. These education is only valuable when both sides engage. Exhibit M, B-point education. Even if politics is about scenario analysis, of politics is pedagogically valuable, enhances creativity, deconstructs biases, and teaches added skills. Barnball 16, scenario analysis juxtaposes current trends, alternative worlds, have future, makes scenario analysis useful. The ability to see make you imagine like, world is constrained by existing models and content by scenarios help individuals break out of conventional modes of thinking, vision, then write out to something different from the present. Participants learn strategies to avoiding failures of creativity, participating, understanding international affairs. C-point, you're often non-unique crucial role about when you're at and use reasonability with a bright line of disclosure, solvency, adequacy, depending the plan throughout the U.S. Okay, yeah. So no reasonability.
Will you resend the affirmative?
Yeah, Dean, it was just like one part, but sure.
Okay, so
it was just reasonability and then
there's no legal or fake in 16?
Yeah.
And you didn't read the reasonability?
Yeah, I read everything else, so.
Ready? Yes. Let's discuss the meta evidence about the state. Where in the resolution does it mandate a state action?
The plan is a state action. Also, I say that making national service
What is
compulsory is a state, something the state would do. Like, I'm not
I don't
sure
think
who
you
else would
defined
make
what national service is, but I want to get to the meat of the issue. Why does it matter if the state is not legitimate?
I'm saying the resolution is a question of what the state ought to do.
Okay, so you're making a claim to an actor-specific ethic, correct?
Sure.
Okay, let's discuss the standard analysis. It says it's not about maximizing non-domination. If I prove that your plan text creates a constraint on action that leads people to become more authoritarian, less likely to check back the government, does that link turn the F?
With like that vague a description, I can't say.
I'll clarify. If I prove that your plan causes people to become like robots that just follow the state, does that turn the F?
Probably.
Probably. I want you to be very clear here because
I don't know exactly.
You're
like, if you say that the neg better maintains procedural checks on state domination, then
sure.
Yes,
sure.
That turns the F.
Sure. So I want to clarify something about the advocacy. You defend police forces, fire departments, and military forces, right? You defend all three.
Yeah, people would serve in those.
All three. Now, which piece of evidence in the contention is specific to fire departments or military forces?
I think the Lind evidence
talks
about military.
Is that it?
Nothing specific.
Nothing specific to firefighters?
No, I think it's.
And the only thing specific to military draft is the Lind 2 evidence.
Yeah,
correct?
I'd say a ton of the other stuff probably applies.
Maybe, probably, but only Lind is specifically about the military. Let's talk a little bit more about this Lind evidence. It seems to say that people come together, they break apart their group identities and create a national identity. Why is national?
Not at all what Lind's saying.
So,
not
clarify.
at all. So Lind is saying we do this sort of local service where we're able to establish checks on things like the police and military because we're like actively part of these groups and we're taking part in governance. So we're able to establish a check
people
on
are drafted into the military as like desk jockeys or like janitors. Why do they have a role in making military strategic decisions?
That's not the argument.
It seems
and
like
also
it is.
Your
argument is about
how
they
would be like actively part of it. They wouldn't just be doing a janitor.
So
That's
you're
not part of the military.
So, right, maybe the gender example is a little extreme, but if I were to draft people, they come in, they get trained, they go through boot camp, they know how to shoot a rifle, but do you think that all of these draftees will be involved in strategic decisions relating to massive foreign policy decisions?
Not necessarily.
So how do they act as a check on militarism, as a check on government abuse?
The point is that if they're taking part in governance, then they would be
But they're not taking part in governance. That's all.
You taking a breath?
Yeah. 411 left.
How many sheets of paper do I need?
The order will be 3 off and then AC.
What's the order on the AC again?
Just top down.
Let me know it's
Alright, I sent it out. Can I borrow the stamp, please?
Oh yeah, sure. Give me 1 sec to open it.
Yeah, of course. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
Lawrence, are you good? The affirmative must only defend compulsory military service, national service, and military service, cameras, training, compulsory service, and the armed service violation. You defend police and fire service and national service, which is more than just compulsory military service. Vote -1. Topical version of the affirmative assault. Just defend firefighters and police officers on military bases. After topicality zoning issue 1, the affirmative can leverage the extra playing to get out of coercion just by saying it gives them the choice between 3 and dealing out on military DI by saying the military or people are most likely not going to join the military. Arguments are key to learn and when second explodes neck crap last 2 many apps CCC, RSVP, AmeriCorps, Senior Corps, and Peace Corps. The list goes on and on. AmeriCorps and Peace Corps are tons of different services of organization killing. Substance engagement limits are important in independent vote in order to be successful. Debaters have to be prepared to join relationship with the family and friends. Now, education's voters, the only out of round effective debate, drop the debate, or creates a general expectancy of arts in the future. Be when hourly how to allocate significant time with theory, lose my ability. When not says refer continuation, reforms are centered by forcing debaters to engage in debate about what is best, not forbid, forcing give it down interpretation for who's a norm, regardless who wins the debate or not. B, if execution intervention be stressful to unreasonable abuse or different. No RVIs, they don't accept the and vote for they vote for me is logical logic themselves. Power level 3 claim second RVIs encourage debaters to not be position, be correct, be position, knowing that they can on theory, the subject is top debate, and encourage yourself to be on subject to unfairly win on theory. Second off, the standard is consistency with universal maximum for the standard 1. The source of normativity is reading immoralism violation, reason to be immoralism violation, reason element 1. To ask why should I demand a reason which concedes the very authority that the questions if we didn't feel like we're going to ask for a reason, the reason for doing something wouldn't help, so it's self-looking to ask for a reason, and reason, the universal reason for you must also be a reason for me. Element 2. Rational creature of access to a shared perspective. Every reason does a summon to our judgment to summon so to be for all. It's inescapable. We can be the summon to and to be the answer for each can be your any perspective. Second, ethics is a guide to actions that tells us what the right thing to do. Universal maximum that first is the only way to guide will action. Course 1. Predictors to wills maximum for example, indication without it, that's other indication that sort of willing is impossible to consider as the cause of your action. I do it with the principle of choice because willing makes it possible for you to distinguish the choice from the incentive which you actually will predicts for you as wholly identified with the incentive of your action, which be or the law that there's only the tyranny of your mother predicts fully around his distinction between a person and sentence approved is impossible that you will maximum take the universal if you're not willing to counter one predators internal center action conform to its constituent of the will. Consequences are relevant. 1. Foreseen effects are independent from nature determines because the consequences of depend on things external to the will, so only intentions can be self-determined. Second, the consequences are relevant. We even have to will the possibility of contradict against an action have different conflicting results which would allow you to unify your will. Their aggregation doesn't make sense. All good is good for someone, but there's no one for whom aggregation is good. There are only people who happen to benefit at the expense of other people's, right? Because that doesn't change the fact that someone is violated for coercion is not you're free to determine your own, but instead subject to the will of the other. Just as a slave isn't no more free if she has a benevolent master. Coercion doesn't become justified if it's aimed at a higher good. 5. The only moral wrongs are those that intentionally infringe upon rights, not those that make property less available to others. For example, if I don't wrong you by buying the last carton of milk at a grocery store and you want milk, but mere habits that takes out the affirmative is about how consequence of the actions about training people engaged. Now negate 1. Coercion is a violation of freedom and forces individuals to act in ways not consistent with their own ends. That's a violation of universalizability, violation of freedom, or internally contradictory to the active coercion wills for and at the same time it denies. 2. You treat people as a means to end its tools for social stability. It's a violation of universal acts by denying others humanity. You deny your own humanity, which you will in every action of humanity is the ability to will and set ends. That's course 1. And all framework must treat people as ends in themselves because otherwise there's no way to distinguish a moral agent from an amoral agent. Now turns the affirmative, the government arbitrarily interferes with the making the right of a person contingent on the government, where the government wants them to go, and what the government needs them to do, particularly because you have 3 options which they make you choose for. Now, next off, text the United States federal government. The United States federal government ought to make local service in the police, fire forces, and fire departments compulsory. It will not make service in the military compulsory. The military is a place of ideological conditioning, conflicts are the right lens, the inducted into a violent culture, all criticism, punishment, draft only increases the ranks of civilians who support aggressive foreign policy for our evidence which accounts for the psychological experience of people as they serve Whitehurst rights. Military kills are confused because they have never felt important fear, and so long as you do others as we're now doing to us, people enter that household like world authoritarianism, exhaustion, suggestible knowledge of what they may do with little, maybe a little help they rationalize, newly implanted beliefs and offer friends absurd explanation of why to change the word I will no longer exist. The process of breaking down the self is the same, and this environment results in permanent socialization. Also, rights, military service shapes identity versus socialization. The military acts as a total institution of confidence are immersed behaviors shape through incentives and punishments. Uniforms remove individual identity, drills, exercises, pledges, as mandatory classes, socialized factors. The second, mechanism of contact those who live in military barracks experience intimate togetherness and military experience and decrease the participation in politics for most veterans. Turns case corrupt. So far, military service can matter to the outcome of political contest, but is neither necessary or sufficient for political success. Military service has left veterans politically unmotivated, or even alienated. Rigorous panel studies found that American veterans of the Vietnam War were not different from their non-veterans when it comes to either most political attitudes or most forms of political participation in war. Political apathy and even bitterness can be found amply by among the industrial world as well. More tolerant of gradual change and limited gains. American soldiers' lack of interest in social action at the end of World War II. The soldier did not come home and reform America. Now the case overrun framework 1. Moral theorists can only judge free action, otherwise we don't hold a rock moral response for killing some randomly, only an active response for reasons without causing necessity. One choice of the other is the Asian free. This account of freedom is interlinked to other theories. Second, non-contradictory to the American straight because this would not be true or false at the same time. 3, holding someone morally responsible is possible only for agents who hold themselves responsible for the same standard, which means the authority to do so much cover a stereotype perspective, which is our framework for justification. I can keep asking why your framework is treating my framework results by being self-referential, fundamental human development, and course bar 1. Now in your 2 models of freedom, the slavery example. 1, if a slave with a benevolent master would not be free under a model. Slaves cannot set ends that would break through their dependent status. Second, this identity of slave necessarily means the master gives order to the master gives order to the slave, which means under other model slavery is wrong. Now off the pedant 1. Now off the pedant 1 of evidence. First, there's absolutely no warrant by the resolution of state obligation. The resolution says, quote, in the United States, just because you have a plan doesn't mean you can have a framework does not answer the resolutional question in the first place, because there's missing internal link between what the United States federal government should do and what should happen in the United States. In the United States. Secondly, is that any violation of freedom. This justifies any violation of freedom being a violation of non-domination, because when I buy the last milk, that means I violate someone else's freedom. 2, impacts 1 turns intuitions because all is non-intuitive, and secondly, it means they're infinite violation of freedom, which means there's no ability for states to act. Now, 3, after specific obligations is bad. You can have role conflict because a person in the state can have an obligation to be a policymaker, but also as a family who has concerns for their children, which means there's no way to principally determine which choice is better. 3, the government uses reason because there's a group of people. 4, if the government still wills action, which means they have to will universally, because any point of willing action has to be consistent with that. And 4th is the state doesn't have to be coercive, absolutely no internal link to that. In the first place, you say it's not recognized, but our pick is still relevant. Our counterpoint says that institution constraints, your institutional constraints does not prevent domination because it actually increases the number of people who are more subservient to the state in the first place. Your repugnancy argument first, you still use reason to act on the intuition. Second, no more what is intuition. Third, intuitions can be repugnant. For example, a racist person has the intuition that black people are bad. Now, over on the contention level, often err heavily negative on the question of the pick because all your evidence is not specific to military. Any cross applications of the 1A or the 2A are absolutely new because they should have been made in the 1AC as to reasons why the warrants from civilian service cross apply or are relevant to military service. Now, in the LIN 2, evidence is the only argument you say is specific to the militia, but one that there's actually just because you're in the draft doesn't mean you have power to change because you're just desk jockeys or grunt people in the first place. Secondly, you still allow for all 3, which means you still have a divide between the civilian and the military because people go into the firefighter service and not the other service in the first place. Third, they still get court-martial, which means they won't be a check on military governments. They'll just say now your 97 evidence, the impact evidence doesn't turn Kant because Kant would say you cannot use people as a means to an end, which means you can't use police officers as a means to check back their own power because that's treating violation of their universal freedom.
You read everything, right?
Yes.
Cool. Wait, sorry, let me show it again. You good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Status of counterplan?
Conditional.
Okay. Counterplan links to the NC, right?
Maybe.
How wouldn't it? If the app links to the NC, how wouldn't the counterplan link
Well,
to the NC?
so a conceivable 1A strategy is to go for the reasons why checks on government are linked turns to Kant. At that point, then the counterplan.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. Let's go to the NC.
Sure.
Actually, your argument on the case about actor specificity, who is the res a question of obligations if it's not the state?
The resolution doesn't have an obligation for a person or an
Wait, but
agent.
I read a plan, so doesn't my plan become the res, and if the plan is the USFG, doesn't mean it's state obligation?
So this argument is a question about whether your plan, in fact, defends the resolutional question. Is it about whether in the United States something should happen, or is it about whether this individual agent...
Wait, so that's
has
a
an obligation?
topicality argument?
It's an argument of how this framework is not specific to the resolution.
But my plan becomes the resolution because I read a plan.
Well, again, the argument is that your plan's offense does not affirm the resolution because there's a distinction between saying someone has an obligation
the
to do
NC
something
development
and that
or
in the United States something can happen.
Okay, next question. Development or reason for use or reason for me. If I have a reason to go to the store, does that mean you have a reason to go to the store?
This is not your reason in like the justificatory sense to individuals. This is reason in the sense that all the reasons behind going to the store has some universal maxim behind it. In order for that action to be consistent with the framework, everybody has to be able to do it without an internal contradiction.
I don't see how to answer my question, but
Well, you can ask
when
questions.
can we ever violate anybody's freedom?
You cannot violate universal principles.
No, but like, are there any situations like can we tax people?
Can we tax people?
Yeah.
If it's a violation of freedom, then no.
Well, I'm asking, is it a violation of freedom?
Well, you're using people as a means to end, so it absolutely is.
So taxation is bad.
Taxation is bad.
Okay, can the state do anything under the NC?
The state can do things. The state just has to be non-coercive.
Okay,
Why does the state have
can
to
you
be a
give me
taxing
wait?
organization?
Can you give me an example of something the state can do under the NC?
Absolutely. It can create opportunities for people to volunteer. It can create the means.
But if they're going to create opportunities, don't they need tax money to create those
I
opportunities?
don't know why that's true. What if people voluntarily gave their money to the government? I mean, you are operating with a conception of the state that has to operate with taxes, that has to be coercive.
Okay, that's
but
fine.
in the past, that's not true. Like,
that's
nomadic
fine.
tribes
That's
do not have a
fine.
coercive government.
That's fine. T.
Let's talk about T.
Yeah. First, do all these paradigm issues apply to AF theory too?
You have to make those arguments.
Okay. And then, why? What's the abuse story on T?
The abuse story is that by defending things that are outside of the resolution, you can leverage those extra plans to get out of specific key negative.
How can I leverage planks to get out of key ground?
So I think our 1 point gives you great examples. By leveraging extra planks, you can say that people choose to go into the military.
Okay, so then that means there's no link to the coercion NC. Cool.
Well, I'm still going to make arguments, but the fact is that your AF allows you to have extra leverage.
Okay, that's fine. Starting time now. we have laws that prevent people from murdering?
Nope. It's coercive.
Okay. I use 403. I'll send the stuff. It'll be T. Sorry. T. TAC. Counterplan and C. Okay. Let me know when everything's ready. First counter trip, the app may only read a plan making service and citizen malicious compulsory assault or offenses is only one after prep. Second counter trip, the app may read a plan making service and citizen malicious compulsory if they have a solvency advocate and it's disclosed that solves your offense. You can predict a bit and it's obvious that I'm not using the extra topical links to leverage it. It doesn't explode limits. Topical proves national service doesn't just mean military, cricket, all 13 services take one of many forms of military, community, or education. Our solvency advocate also refers to the plan as a form of national service, proving it's within the resolution. Turns out outweighs your definition. Topically controls pure unpredictability, not random dictionary definition. That benefit is breadth of outcome. Your interpretation of the same repetitive conscription debates round after round. My interpret to discuss other forms of national service force today to research different apps. This means multi round solves your opportunity. Talking about military conscription and other rounds. Also, your TVA doesn't make sense. Obviously we don't get any of our offenses. All our offenses specific to things like police domination in civil society, not like on things like military bases. So definitely doesn't solve the app. Also, if we get TVA, that just takes out all your arguments because it still proves you're gonna have to do specific prep against your app. Using extra T arguments to get out of points makes no sense. It's definitely not what's happening in the happening in the default in round of there are infinite things other people would do, but only hold me accountable for what I did in round. And it definitely doesn't explode limit time for me and RBI rest with paucity. Otherwise, it gets team theory, but the app only gets theory kills fairness into morals, balance, structural cues. That way, some could be which can be overcome by being a better debate. Skip the V.2 times skip the 2 errors too short to prove empty inadequately cover something 3 minutes. Effective 2 hours will split the time make covering impossible. Let's can clap to the top layer off the logic arguments, misunderstandings, and RBI. I'm not saying I win for being key value. You should lose for reading false theory off. 2, there's no impact to logic off. There's only effect level 1 at the 8 after something truly abusive and next should be able to win T anywhere. B the shell was frivolous. Socially was good off 7 of education. Double line and the neg legitimately red theory and the RBI doesn't matter. Red theory is a strategic time suck. In which case RBI could be the deter the neg from reading theory. Now the case. The NC is ridiculous. He says we can't even have laws to prevent people from murdering each other, which means A should independently reject him down because he literally can't condemn anything. Like if people are literally allowed to go around murder, that means like people can go around doing all kinds of terrible crap, which makes debate unsafe because he's literally justifying people going around murdering them, and he can't condemn things like that. So people can't access the debate space if he is literally justifying terrible things like that. That's an a priori issue because it precludes you from even evaluating the rest of the round. If people aren't able to actually access the debate space in the first place, also a multiplier for other impacts. B, it proves that the NC can't apply to actor-specific obligations. All I need to do is when the state obligations are even to that is sufficient. He says the resolution is not a question of it, but one the plan becomes a resolution. I defend federal government action because it's a question of whether or not the U.S. federal government ought to pass the plan. So it's still a question of actor-specific obligations. And two, there's no he doesn't provide an alternative actor, and there's no reason why. Like the resolution would be a different actor. Also going for the intuitions argument. If he can't condemn problems in political society like poverty and police domination, double line other contention should matter in the NC, or the NC can't condemn things like police domination, which means you should vote him down because he's literally justifying the police brutality because it might violate a few people's freedom. Now the contention. Extend Lin that, or actually I'll just do that on the counterplan. The counterplan. First conduct picks are a voter, they steal the entirety of the offense, force they one error restart, but then they can just kick out of all the offense I put on the counterplan, which creates a massive time to use my grabs. I'm not able to make arguments. Also, perf cons is a voter. The counterplan definitely links to the NT because it forces people to join this. Is a voter for Stratsky because I'm not able to engage if he's just my two contradictory things. It also makes me split my time and go and contradict myself. Two, now permutation. It's justified. Permutation do both. Justified because he stole a portion of the alpha. Also permutation do the counterplan. Then the affirmative. The link is terrible. There's no link. The alpha is in overseas. It's local and it's about new militias, not status quo military. So definitely doesn't link. Also, this just proves triad. It's a triad for trying to get people in the military that can check it. There's no impact to participation. Now the NC, the constitutional flow can apply to state because NC concerns inner freedom. The will course guarded to the principle of problem solving. It's how we act given free rules of problem politics. It's how we give free in the world in which we interact with other two different domains of freedom, inner freedom and liberty. I just cut the course guard part of liberty.
I had 411 left.
Yeah.
What was the first argument on condo picks bad?
It was that you steal the entire app, but then so I have to establish new offense on the CP, but then you can just kick out of that new offense. Anything new? Anything new?
Well, there's some theory analytics.
Do you mind standing up? And what's the order?
The order will be the counterplan, or the well, wherever you flowed like the a priori because it's, oppressive or whatever, then the condo stuff on the counterplan, and then on the T shell.
So, the, a priori thing, counterplan, NCT. Did you send it?
Yeah, just sent it, so it might be one.
Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
Lawrence, are you good? Everybody ready?
Just make sure it's not this, because
Yeah, definitely. Off the a priori one, you misunderstand our Kantian argument. Just because we can't say the state can coerce you to not to do something doesn't mean we can't say that killing people is bad. For example, we can say there's an individual obligation for someone not to kill another person because it violates universal maximum, but we can also say that the state doesn't have an obligation or is moral to come in and step in and violate those two people's freedom. Your misunderstanding doesn't allow us to use Kantianism and reinterpret Kantianism. Secondly, it's not an a priori, it's just a contention level framework argument. Third, no a priori, no spillover, because people don't follow Kant, they just read arguments they don't believe all the time. For no representations do not matter because representations do not matter because words are constantly changing, which means that which means that there's no stable definition of one type of interpretation under Kant in the first place. Kant in the first place. Fourth of all is that just because it justifies terrible stuff doesn't mean we shouldn't read it. You should be able to engage with these types of arguments that you view as quote unquote bad in the first place. Now on the pick, conditionality is good. This is going to be my offense. One, neg flex to bring forcing them to be inherently reactionary must test policy angles from both angles, because especially justifying the instance of the one I see is not a whole res advocacy is specific to a type of advocacy. Second, the strategic thinking forces them to narrowly tailor their terms to their case, increasing specific education, putting best arguments on top of reading add-ons, teaches adaptation and efficiency. Third, you don't have a right to cover time as part of the game, setting an intellectual challenge weeds out better debaters. We couldn't run 10 topical shells, making this Q and level of 4. Two in our checks will only go for one option in the 200 check because which means your 2 has to just dump on one. Just dump on 1/6 Ramirez rule. Policymaker status quo is always a logical policy option, but also your own arguments running the unrevealing case indicates we have to test policy options from multiple different angles to get the education, and contradictory positions are key to critical thinking. Suppressing them stifles discussion, undermines the educational value of exploring tensions between arguments. Lewis and Dealer, 2000. Teaching with paradox offers a value learning opportunity for instruction of all students, resisting the temptation to overuse teaching paradigm tactics, refrains from regulating their experience, provoking insightful debate, conflict can become creativity, and impelling the devil's active can help students' identity assumptions and more critical questions to move beyond which an alternative is right to greatly make sense of the contradiction by transcending other or logic of education on more process than product. Explore contradiction methods, suppress the unresolved tension, may be a sign that real education has happened. Now off your 1 point excuse for you say excuse your strategy. One, it doesn't excuse your strategy. It just asks if your 1AC strategy was good in the first place. So you don't have to make new turns against the neg counterplan the 1AR. You just have to leverage your affirmative as a good affirmative. Secondly, is that there's no strat skew. Strat skew is inevitable because they're always going to be good better debaters than other debaters. Also structural skews because the debaters with more coaches than another you say perf con bad, no impact because just no impact in this particular round. You can say that coercion is okay to respond to the content C and say that coercion in this particular instance is not good. For example, coercion in the military. So you can say that coercion in the military is good and and secondly is that under either plan, if I made the pick under condo, you still have to respond to both con and the con and the pick for the scenario I laid out in cross-examination. For example, because you made a reason why your case turns the content C, I would still have to defend the pick. I would still have to defend both of these positions either either way, in either situation. Also, to wanting our theory bad because there's no 3 in ours to respond to your new 2 AR answers, which is necessarily unfair and means you cannot indict our affirmative now on our T interpretation and now on our T interpretation extend our interpretation. Our argument is not our argument is that you reading additional planks out of the military service is bad. Your overview, which means it takes out all your arguments why breadth of education is bad. Now extend our definition is from the Cambridge definition. First definition on language means it knows common usage. Common usage controls the internal links to topic literature because you don't research the topic first. You research what you Google what the definition of these words are, and then go from there. If the first definition about the draft, well, obviously you'll look at the draft in the first place as well. Now your Grego 13 evidence. Grego 13 evidence is not from the topic literature, it's literally from the Huffington Post, which means dude from the Huffington Post. Secondly, is that it says it could take one of many forms. It doesn't mean it should take one of many forms, which means pragmatic still apply in this circumstance. Now on your counter interpretations, your first counter interpretation, you violate. You say, quote, the affirmative may only read a plan making service and civilian missions compulsory, but you do more than that because you have other stuff in that. You say it solves your offense. No, it doesn't. That doesn't mean there's only one after prep. The model you justify makes it infinitely predictable. Also, every activator will just say, oh, it's just my app, which means that you will lead to infinite regress in the first place. Now your counter solvency advocate doesn't solve. There's no reason why there's a negative prep against that type of solvency advocate. Second, just because there's a solvency advocate doesn't mean I researched it because across the common usage analysis right here, common usage right here. Third of all, you read extra stuff. You read extra stuff besides just solvency advocate. Third, besides the little civilian missions. Now your now your offense. You say breadth of affirmatives. You say breadth of affirmatives, but no, we don't say have to have the repetitive conservative debates because you'll have multiple interpretations or multiple advantages. Second, other forms of national service, it presumes you're winning the T debate to have that. Third of all, the researching different affirmatives is bad. It overstretches limits because you justify an infinite number of bats. Fourth, in-depth debate is this issue is particularly key because Trump wants to go to war with so many different countries, which means it's very likely that he might have to conscript people to specifically debate on military advantages like underutil is necessarily good. It's the question of U.S. hegemony, good bad, which is going to be necessarily key on this discussion. Fourth, the no war by military is going to be discussed in other rounds. This imperial claim without imperial war. And fourth, and multiple rounds don't solve our offense. In-depth is necessarily key on this type of education in the first place. Afflex is bad. You cross-apply the above arguments. We turn topic literature because it's common use controls the internal link. Controls the internal link. Now on our shall extend the extra T advantage. Our extra T advantage usually because you didn't do it in this round doesn't mean you have the potentiality to do, which means it's still linked. Secondly, you definitely could. You definitely were thinking about it because it conceived in the cross-examination. You can leverage the arguments to say that it's not necessarily coercive. Also, you can see that limits that way and is imperative voter because it means the debate. Its orientation is away from doing other stuff in the first place. Now TVA extend the TVA solves all your offense. Just say that people conscripted the military do police service in the first place. We do police service or which means that you don't win the TVA on this type of debate. Also, our extra topicalities outweighs because it means you get extra ground to defend other things about the model of debate you justify.
Okay. I had a minute starting now. You concede I get RBIs, right?
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, then RBIs on theory is good.
Wait, so it applies to like the condo stuff too? Okay. I'm good. It'll be like the, I guess, RBI quickly, then the T-shell proper, and maybe like the independent voter thing. The RBI warrants were app specific, and he doesn't do that cross application to an don't do it form, and then just saying that in flex press isn't sufficient. The warrant was specific. Only the neg gets to read things like only the neg can read T in theory, so it means it's restrict. Also, the times he warrant was specific to the two or not having enough time to both win T and cover substance, and he doesn't do that cross application. Don't do it form, and there's no reason that's specific to there's no reason that should be specific to neg theory. Now the shell proper. The question of this round is whether we should be able to talk about police and the military versus only talking about the military. His interpretation Permutation excludes discussion of important issues of things like police brutality, which he arbitrarily excludes discussion of the app. The TVA definitely doesn't solve, and a 5-second extension at the end isn't sufficient. He concedes two arguments. The first is that we never actually get to talk about the substance of our app. Things like police brutality, are things that happen in civil society, but putting police officers on military bases isn't sufficient. Also, it means that we don't get to read our app because obviously you can't put everybody onto a military base for police, whereas you can do that in local communities. So it definitely doesn't solve. You also can see that TVA takes out all of your standard fees. It still proves you'll have to do specific prep to things like police. So the limit stuff is not unique even if you win TVA. Now the definition debate, the Crago et al. Evidence. It's a question of pragmatics. You don't read any semantics first justification. So even if your definition is slightly better than mine, it's still a question of which definition is pragmatically better. So if insofar as a definition, you default to pragmatics, you say but I'll answer it anyway. The Crago, you say it's not on the topic list, but it definitely is. When you type in national service, military service, it's one of the first articles that pops up, which means it's definitely in the literature. It's definitely in literature. It's also empirically proven in tons of other rounds. People reading after like service learning and Peace Corps, which proves it's definitely possible. So it should still be a question. It should still be a question of pragmatic. Extend the breadth of app standard. We never get to talk about things like RF in your world because you arbitrarily limit to military offense. Multiple rounds definitely solves all your offense. People are reading conscription apps in literally in almost every other round, so we can still get that education and checking things like Trump. There's no reason it's uniquely key in this round but I'm pretty sure that nobody is reading an app like mine, which means that's the net benefit to our counter is getting to talk about things like police brutality, which our app does. The disclosure and solvent category definitely solves limits. You say that you wouldn't research it because it's not definition, but obviously you were able to research it before the round. And generics still solve a lot of your offense, like the content you can read against every single app. So there's no reason it's uniquely bad. Also, it solves enough of your offense for a breadth of apps argument to outweigh limits. Isn't an independent voter. It's a question of strength of link. Your strength of link into limits is tiny because of the TVA and the counter term solving all of our offense, but your interp massively over limits the topic to just talking about military offense instead of letting us talk about other things like RF. But you shouldn't vote on. It's a question of extra T. And it's whether we should also be able to talk like things about our app. Multi-round solves all your offense. And under your interp, we never get to talk about your app. TVA definitely doesn't solve. In a shell that was like 30 seconds in the 1 and C, you're not going to vote on because I won. Good round.